They told him he'd never succeed without a high school diploma. They said he was wasting his time trying to better himself. They were wrong. Brian Tracy went from washing dishes for $125 an hour to earning millions teaching others how to succeed. This is the ultimate proof that formal education doesn't determine your future. Self-education does. His story will show you how someone with no advantages, no connections, and no college degree became one of the most sought-after business consultants in the world. If you've ever felt like the odds are stacked against you, this story will change everything you believe about what's possible. Brian Tracy's story is a transformation story that has inspired millions of people. He didn't just change his own life, he taught the secrets of success to over 5 million people worldwide. He wrote more than 80 books, spoke in over 70 countries, and consulted with Fortune 500 company executives. But behind this success was a very different beginning than everyone could see. Brian Tracy started life as someone society labeled as a failure. He couldn't finish high school, couldn't go to college, and worked in low-paying, unskilled jobs for many years. In the eyes of his family, teachers, and society, he was someone who would never amount to anything in life. So how did this man become one of the world's most respected success teachers? What principles did he discover? What obstacles did he overcome? And most importantly, how can the lessons he learned change your life? This story will prove that success is not about your diploma, your connections, or your starting conditions. It's about your mindset and your desire to learn. Brian Tracy's journey is living proof that anyone can radically change their own life. Brian Tracy was born on January 5, 1944, in Charlottetown, Canada. His family was middle class, but they had no special circumstances. Brian grew up in a family of 4 children and struggled with academic success from childhood. School was a nightmare for Brian. He couldn't adapt to the traditional education system. His teachers saw him as lazy, unmotivated, and talentless. Brian was constantly struggling to raise his GPA, but he could never succeed. High school years were even harder for Brian. He felt stupid and had no plans for the future. While his classmates were making college plans, Brian was just hoping to finish school. But even this hope didn't come true. At age 17, Brian Tracy dropped out of high school without completing it. This decision was met with great disappointment by his family and teachers. Everyone told him he would never amount to anything, and at that time, these predictions seemed accurate. After dropping out of high school, Brian was unemployed and had no skills. He was one of those society considered failures, but this difficult beginning was preparing him for the greatest lessons of his life. After dropping out of high school, the reality Brian Tracy faced was merciless. As a young man with no qualifications, he could only work in jobs that required physical strength. His first job was as a laborer on a construction site. Brian did 8–10 hours of heavy physical work per day. His hands were blistering, his back was aching, but he had no other choice than this job. He earned only a few dollars per hour, and this money barely covered his basic needs. After the construction job, Brian started washing dishes at a restaurant. This job was even harder, standing for hours in a hot, humid kitchen cleaning dirty plates. He earned $1.25 per hour, which was very low pay for that time. During this period, Brian's biggest problem wasn't just financial difficulties. His real problem was hopelessness about the future. He felt trapped in a cycle of failure. Every morning he went to the same job, lived the same routine, and couldn't see any progress in his life. Brian's family and environment didn't have much faith in him either. "You're academically weak. It's best to continue working simple jobs," they would say. These constant negative feedback further undermined Brian's self-confidence. But there was something different about Brian. He didn't want to accept this situation. A voice inside him said he was created for bigger things. This voice would lead him to the most important decision of his life. When Brian Tracy was 21, the first major turning point in his life occurred. He had started washing cars at a car dealership. This job was also low-paying and unprestigious like the others. But here Brian noticed something that would change his life. The owner of the dealership and the sales consultants looked very different from Brian. They dressed well, drove nice cars, and acted confidently. Brian wondered, what do these people have that I don't? One day he gathered courage and asked the dealership owner, "How did you become so successful?" The man gave him a surprising answer, "By continuing to learn constantly. I try to learn something new every day." This simple answer struck like lightning in Brian's mind. He had failed in formal education, but this didn't close the door to self-education. Maybe there were ways to improve himself outside of school. Brian first decided to learn about sales. He went to the nearby library and borrowed books on sales. He read Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. This book was like a revelation to him. He began applying the techniques he learned from the book at the dealership. He tried to communicate better with customers and understand their needs. And something amazing happened. People started treating him differently. Brian's performance in car washing improved so much that the dealership owner offered him a sales consultant position. This was a huge opportunity for Brian. For the first time, he was being offered a job where he could use not just his physical strength, but his mental power. But Brian faced major obstacles. He had no experience in sales. He didn't know how to talk to customers or how to persuade them. Other sales consultants were college graduates and much more experienced. Brian decided to overcome these obstacles through self-education. He read every possible sales book. He studied the works of Dale Carnegie, Napoleon Hill, and other success writers. He worked day and night on sales techniques. In his first months, Brian struggled a lot. Customers didn't trust him. His sales were low. But he didn't give up. He learned from every failure and constantly improved himself. After 6 months, Brian's sales figures were among the best in the dealership. Using only techniques learned from books, he had surpassed experienced sales consultants. This success showed him the power of self-education. Brian realized that the secret to his success in sales was continuous learning. He tried new techniques every day, observed successful colleagues, and analyzed customer feedback. After his success in car sales, Brian Tracy began looking for bigger opportunities. He moved into the real estate sector. Real estate offered larger commissions and more income potential. In the real estate sector, Brian applied the same approach, continuous learning. He learned everything about real estate law, financing, marketing, and customer relations. He didn't just read books, he got mentorship from successful real estate consultants. Brian's real estate career was very successful. He became one of the top-selling real estate consultants in his region. But more importantly, he was beginning to discover the formula for success. During this period, Brian began analyzing his own success. Why am I successful? What do I have that other people don't? He asked. And he came to this conclusion: the habit of continuous learning and development. Brian found this discovery very valuable. He had found the secret of how someone without formal education could be successful. And this secret could be taught not only to himself, but to other people. In the early 1970s, Brian began teaching sales and success topics to other people for the first time. Initially in small groups, then later in larger seminars. Brian Tracy's teaching journey began by chance. His colleagues at the real estate company were curious about his sales techniques. "Brian, how are you so successful?" they would ask. Initially, Brian just wanted to help his friends. He began sharing the techniques and principles he had learned. But he realized that he could teach not only technical knowledge, but also motivation and mindset change. He gave his first official seminar in 1974. The topic was Secrets of Success in Sales. Only 20 people attended, but the feedback from participants was incredible. People were actually getting results by applying what Brian taught. This success greatly excited Brian. He saw how effective it was to teach people success principles. And more importantly, he realized he took great pleasure in doing this. Brian had started giving seminars as a hobby, but he understood that this could be a new career path for him. He focused on giving more seminars by reducing his income from real estate sales. In 1976, Brian made the transition to the education and consulting sector full-time. This decision was risky. He was leaving his steady income for an uncertain income. But he decided to take this risk because he had found his purpose. In the early 1980s, Brian Tracy decided to expand his teaching methodology. He wanted to reach wider audiences through books and audio cassettes rather than being limited to seminars. He started working on his first book, Maximum Achievement. This book would be a compilation of success principles he had learned over the years. But writing a book was very different from giving speeches. Brian used the same approach in the book writing process, continuous learning. He read books on writing, studied successful authors, and learned writing techniques. Maximum Achievement was published in 1993 and achieved great success. The book covered not only sales techniques, but every area of personal development: goal setting, time management, motivation, self-confidence, and more. After the book's success, Brian developed audio cassettes and video series. These products allowed people to learn in their cars, homes, and workplaces. As Brian's product range expanded, his income also increased exponentially. He had become not only a teacher, but also an entrepreneur. In the 1990s, Brian Tracy began gaining international recognition. His seminars and books were receiving great interest outside the United States as well. Brian began giving speeches worldwide. He gave seminars in Europe, Asia, Australia, and Africa. In each country, he met people from different cultures, but he realized that success principles were universal. Brian's biggest discovery during this period was that success principles transcended cultural boundaries. Whether in Japan or Brazil, people had the same basic needs: goals, motivation, skill development, and self-confidence. Brian learned from his experiences in each country and continuously improved his teaching. He integrated not only American business culture, but also global perspective into his programs. In the 2000s, Brian Tracy International became a globally recognized brand. His programs were offered in over 70 countries and translated into more than 40 languages. Brian Tracy's most important contribution was proving the power of self-education. He showed that formal education alone is not sufficient, and continuous learning is the real success factor. Brian's self-education philosophy was based on 3 basic principles. First principle: learn at least 1 hour per day in your field. This meant dedicating 1 hour of your day to personal development instead of just watching television. Second principle: study successful people and imitate them. Brian had observed successful people during his own failure periods and learned what they did. Third principle: apply what you learn immediately. Knowledge becomes valuable only when applied. Brian, who applied these principles in his own life, also taught them to millions of people, and countless people used these principles to change their lives. Brian Tracy's success was not only in the professional field, he also established a happy family life. He married his wife Barbara and had 4 children. Brian also managed his family life with success principles. He made spending time with his wife and children a priority. He maintained communication with his family, even during business trips. He also taught his children the importance of self-education. He encouraged them to read, learn, and develop themselves. Brian's children also became successful in their own fields. Brian considered his success in family life as important as his success in business life. He would say, "True success is achieving balance in all areas of life." Brian Tracy not only taught practical techniques, but also made theoretical contributions to the field of personal development. He researched the scientific foundations of success and developed systematic methods. One of his most important contributions was the goal-setting methodology. Brian divided the effective goal-setting process into 12 steps and helped millions of people reach their goals with this system. Another important contribution was in the field of time management. Brian developed techniques for using time effectively and presented them in simple, applicable formats. Brian's sales training methods were also groundbreaking. He defined sales not as an art, but as a learnable skill, and developed systematic sales training programs. When the internet became widespread in the early 2000s, Brian Tracy immediately embraced this technology. He adapted his teaching methods to digital platforms. Brian's online courses, webinars, and podcasts reached millions of people. He was one of the pioneers who recognized the educational power of technology early. He also became active on YouTube, social media, and e-learning platforms. Despite being close to 80 years old, Brian continued to learn and use new technologies. This adaptability became living proof of his continuous learning philosophy. He taught his students not to keep up with technology, but to stay ahead of it. Today, Brian Tracy continues to work actively despite approaching 80 years of age. He still gives seminars, writes books, and provides consulting. His company, Brian Tracy International, has become a large organization operating worldwide. It has hundreds of trainers and thousands of distributors. Brian's more than 80 books have been translated into more than 40 languages and sold more than 5 million copies. His audio programs, video series, and online courses have reached millions of people. But Brian's greatest success is the transformations he has created in people's lives. Millions of people who learned from him have recorded dramatic improvements in their careers, families, and personal lives. The most important lesson that can be drawn from Brian Tracy's story is that the formula for success is simple: continuous learning plus application plus perseverance. He started as a person without a high school diploma, but never stopped learning. Every day he learned something new, applied what he learned, and learned from failures. Another secret of Brian's success was his desire to serve others. He didn't just think about his own success, he discovered the value of sharing what he learned with others. His story is proof that everyone can change their own life. Your starting conditions, your past, or your current situation don't matter. What matters is your determination to learn and develop. Brian Tracy's story is the story of a high school dropout becoming one of the world's most respected success teachers. But this is not just one person's success story. This is the story of the limitlessness of human potential. If Brian Tracy could go from washing dishes for $1.25 an hour to teaching success to millions of people, you too can reach your dreams. All you need is your determination to learn and develop. The most important lesson Brian teaches is this: where you are in your life doesn't matter. What matters is where you're going. And the factor that determines where you're going is what you learn and how you apply what you learn. Brian Tracy's story is not just a success story. This is the story of the power of hope, perseverance, and self-education. He is living proof that you can be successful even if you don't have a diploma, even if you don't have connections, even if you don't have starting advantages. So what will you do? Will you embark on a journey of self-improvement like Brian Tracy? Because remember, success is not measured by where you started, but by where you arrived. And as Brian Tracy has shown, with the right mindset and continuous learning, everyone can achieve much greater success than their dreams. Now, after listening to this story, ask yourself these questions. Why can't I be Brian Tracy? Why can't I become a world-renowned expert in my field? Why can't I write a story that inspires millions of people? Because Brian Tracy didn't have any superpowers. He was an ordinary person just like us. The only difference was that he never stopped learning and took steps to improve himself every day. You can do the same thing. Today, right now, wherever you are, at work, at home, at school, whatever it is, you can start your own transformation journey. Like Brian Tracy, read a book every day, listen to a podcast, learn a new skill. If you learn something every day for just 365 days, you'll be a completely different person in a year. Remember, Brian Tracy was dreaming big even while washing dishes. No matter what job you're doing right now, this is just a transition period. Your real goal should be to get yourself out of that position by continuously learning. If Brian Tracy can continue learning at age 80 despite dropping out of high school at 17, you can never say, "It's too late," at any age. Learning has no age. Development has no limits. Now, get up and take action. Take your first step. Because Brian Tracy's story can be your story. All you need is the courage to start. Remember, success is not a gift, it's a decision. And you can make this decision now, today. If this story inspired you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, because as Rise Stories, we will continue to bring you many more motivational, life-changing real stories.